Eagles Talk A2D Radio. We keep it up to date with training camp. We are going to talk about the right guard position. We've got a camp battle, ladies and gentlemen. We'll keep you up to date and talk about all the other stuff coming from training camp. So stick with us for the next hour. Eagles Talk. Let's go.
You love the Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! You love the Philadelphia Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! Philadelphia!
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Eagles Talk on A2D Radio. We are brought to you by, as usual, Baggio's Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, home of the best stuffed breads, tomato pie sandwiches, cutlets, and meatballs. Make sure you mention A2D Radio for 10% off your in-store purchase. It's me, your boy Chucks, it's Brinks, and PY will be with us in any minute. Don't worry, he'll be with us. And then also, Les Bowen, as usual, will be joining us around the 15-minute mark. So stay tuned for that. Brinks, how was your week? How you doing, man?
Good. It's been good. Rocking and rolling on the Olympics. Kind of a little tease for competition. Phillies won yesterday too, so
yes, they did.
We are barreling towards Eagles football. It's starting to get excited. We got some camp battles. We got some guys doing good. We got some guys doing bad. So, they made a signing at linebacker, minor signing, but I'm sure we'll talk about that as the show goes on. But it's getting exciting. I think I saw our Facebook. It's 33 days until Brazil, something like that.
I think it's something like that. Yeah. So it's exciting. We're almost there. Almost
I know. I saw a college football one that was like 20 days, and I'm like, whoa. Okay.
Ooh.
Now we're like really almost.
Yeah, we're into that. We are getting really into it. So it's football's not far away, and I love it. I'm excited, and the Eagles' first preseason game, I believe, was this Friday. So we've got some actual football, and there's just still a lot to talk about as we head into that. But tonight we are going to talk about the right guard position because we've got a camp battle. Like I said at the top of the show, Mekhi Becton versus Tyler Steen. So let's get into our poll question. Mekhi Becton will beat out Tyler Steen for the right guard position to start the season. Agree or disagree? Go ahead, Brinks. What do you think? Who's it going to come down to? Who's predicting right now, even though we got a month away till week 1? Who do you think at this point you'd have to say will win out?
First off, I think Stoutland and this scheme will have either guy ready to go. So I really think neither are going to be, all pros or Pro Bowlers or anything like that. Maybe not. But I'm going to disagree to the poll. I think I'm going to give Tyler Steen. I think he's going to get the nod with Steve's a 3rd-round pick. That's a relatively high draft pick. And I think it is imperative to keep Mekhi Becton healthy in case a tackle goes down. Because if Mekhi Becton gets hurt playing guard, which, it's why he's here. He hasn't been able to stay. He's a beast, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. That's the reason why he didn't work out in New York for him. That's the reason why he's here. So if Mailata or Lane Johnson, knock on wood, go down, that's why Mekhi Becton's here. Mekhi Becton is not here to play guard. So I think someone else besides Mekhi Becton is going to be the right guard, whether it's Steen or, someone else crawls out of the woodwork and steals a job. I don't really care, but I think it's best served for this team, at least to start, with Mekhi Becton as a backup tackle as opposed to a starting guard. For Mekhi Becton, for him to win the job over Steen, it would have to be like a blowout route roll job in the competition for me to give Mekhi Becton that job. Because ultimately you do need the best players on the field. This is still the NFL, and we're starting hot against the Packers. I hate to say that, put so much emphasis, because I feel like I do it every week on the Green Bay game, but tiebreaker purposes, home field, seeding, that's a pretty big game in week 1 down in Brazil. And have I mentioned that I hate that it's in Brazil? Have I mentioned that on the show before?
You have.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's that's my piece on right guard. I'm going to go with Steen over Becton for the reasons that I outlined right there.
Gotcha. Let me bring in PY. We're in the nick of time. What's going on, man?
Sorry I'm late.
All good. But you're just in time to answer the poll question. What do you think? Mekhi Becton will beat out Tyler Steen for the right guard position to start the season. Agree or disagree?
So I have to agree. Like, I think the Eagles brought him in for a reason. I think they see something in him. I think Stoutland sees something in him, and that alone is like enough for me to risk things on him. Like, I like Tyler Steen. Like, obviously he's an Alabama kid, so like, and that's worked out for us in the past. But like, honestly, like, what has Tyler Steen really showed you to the point to where you're like, all right, that's right guard. He's the right guard of the future. Like, I haven't really seen anything. Like, I saw a little bit of promise from him last year, but like, that's not enough for me to be like, oh no, Mekhi Becton can't do it. Mekhi Becton was a first round pick. Like, obviously he was a first round pick when it comes to the tackle position, but I have to think that like, if they didn't think he could be a guard, they wouldn't be transitioning him to guard. Like, I think as of right now, especially with Steen's unhealthiness and his inability to stay on the field at this moment in time, I think the right guard position is Mekhi Becton's unless he gets hurt.
Interesting. Okay, so I hear you on that, and I'm with Brinks. I disagree to the poll. I think that with Mekhi Becton, Mekhi Becton.
Don't you just feel dirty saying it?
No. I think I've agreed with Brinks on a bunch of stuff here. So,
God,
you know,
he agrees with me more than he agrees with you.
Once again, that should be a red flag in itself.
Yeah, I'm a smart guy.
I don't think
he's biased for whatever reason, man.
You have to call yourself a smart guy,
man.
So here's the thing. I hear you about Mekhi Becton and him being a former first-round pick is appealing. You know what I mean? And you love when you get these reclamation projects from another team of an early pick. It's just like, oh yeah, like we want to be able to turn that into gold because that's an awesome thing. Like, and I would love for that to happen. I'm not saying it's not going to. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he does beat out Tyler Steen because again, you will get him. He's massive, and you can see why he was a first-round pick. And I think that where he does have an advantage is probably in run blocking because of his size, because of that physical talent, and like with when it comes to run blocking, you're the aggressor. So I think that he does have an edge there. However, I do think like what Brink said in terms of you kind of like Mekhi Becton's kind of got to be that backup tackle. That's my tackle if you need him to be. That is another element that we can't ignore. And at the same time, like I was one of the people that pumped the brakes on Tyler Steen last year. Like his one start he had, he didn't play well. Like, and we had a lot of, I know PY, you were one of the people that thought he played well. So like I was telling you, pump the brakes. He didn't play that well. And during this offseason and in the draft, I was like, if the board falls a certain way where the corners are not there, I would be open to drafting a right guard in the first round if the corners are all gone. You know what I mean? So like I wasn't opposed to it, and I would have been open to drafting one on day 2. So like I'm not saying Tyler Steen is like a proven commodity by any means, but I also think that we are starting to get to a territory where like, yeah, we're seeing Becton in there, but I think Tyler Steen is on his way to getting those reps back because even though he was back at practice, he didn't really practice. He was still limited. And based on what I saw in the reports. So I think once he's healthy and back actually practicing, I think he will get those reps back. And I think that and maybe part of this is because like it's one of those an unknown is more appealing than a known. Remember like the Family Guy clip, like, oh, well, what's in, like, you can have what's in the box or
what's in the mystery box.
Yeah, it's a mystery box, right? That thing, I admit part of it is that, but seeing Mekhi Becton with the Jets, his pass protection worries me, and like for good reason. He did not play well with the Jets, and so I worry about that aspect a lot when it comes to Becton. Like we've seen it, we've seen him play poorly. So I think if you were to, again, this is a tight race as of right now. I think it's really close to call. But if you were to make me pick, I'd have to say Tyler Steen. And I think Tyler Steen, I think it's his job to lose. I think as long as he's steady and solid, I think he will be the right guard. And then put Becton in there as your sixth offensive lineman who's versatile, can play all, both interior and on tackle. So I think ideally that's what the Eagles want too, because Steen is a homegrown guy. So like I think that's the route they want to go ideally. I think that's what we're looking for. But it's still early. Steen has been hurt. Becton has been getting the reps. Now I think he left practice early today too, so I didn't get an update on the reports from this morning, but we shall see. I posted something when I saw that Becton missed was in at practice, but then he left. I was like, I posted a gif of like a revolving door, and I'm like, this is the right guard position right now. It's like a revolving door. Like we don't know who's going to get reps, who's going to get playing time. So it's tough to say. But again, I think when it comes down to it, I think Steen's going to be the guy. But I think this is one of the biggest storylines. I mean, you can argue this and the CB2 battle, but this is more of a concerning side. Where CB2, you hear like all these guys, the three guys in competition, are playing lights out. So like it's an interesting battle from a positive side, but the right guard, it's interesting from like a concerning side where you're just like, you want someone to grab and step up and grab hold of that job. So far, we haven't seen it. We'll see how preseason games go and how it plays out. But it is something to monitor. To the comments real quick before we get into the less. Dynasty says, haven't been up on camp. Has Keegan got any first team reps yet? Because I think eventually he gets a job, whether week 1 or 12. I think he's starting by year's end. He hasn't got any first team reps, and I think at one point, I think he was hurt, but I know that he's back at practice now. I believe I read that, so I'm not 100% sure. Again, since I'm not a B reporter, I'm not at practices, so I can't tell you what I know or do not know. Pete also says he agrees the talent was there the whole time. Dynasty also follows up, says, so for right now, I agree to the poll. So he's going with Becton.
Smart people.
Bob Brown says this team needs to run with Becton at right guard. Steen needs to get moved for edge help. What? Before Steen's value drops like Dillard's did.
He wants Tyler Steen to get traded for a linebacker or an edge rusher.
Oh, traded for.
That's how I interpreted the comment when I read it.
Someone's been drinking.
Second-year player, I'm not giving up on them that easily. No.
Yeah,
you're not trading a guy who is basically their second round pick, even though they took him in the third, for nothing. Like that's just not happening.
Yeah.
Like what?
From Bama.
I understand that, but so my question to him, can you put the comment back up?
Yeah.
Bob, name me the person that you're trading right now for that Tyler Steen is going to get you. What linebacker or edge rusher right now, based on what we've seen of Tyler Steen in the NFL, that you're going to get, and it's going to give you any help, other than some random dude?
Exactly. And the Steen's value isn't high right now.
If you look at how I have their depth chart right here up. If you look at their depth chart and how they kind of set up this offensive line, they took Dylan McMahon out of NC State as an interior lineman in this draft. They took Keegan Bradley, not Keegan Bradley, Trevor Keegan. Keegan Bradley. He's a golfer.
He's crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, they took him in the 5th round, big Haas out of Michigan, big physical Big Ten guy. So they need one of those guys. If it's not Steen, they need some of the Matt Hennessy's still here out of Temple. I believe it's his 2nd or 3rd year. He's been here before. So if Steen can't do it, someone at one of those guys I just named that's young and unproven, I'll give you that, has to step up because, like, I look at these tackles, like Becton's listed as – it's actually interesting because he's actually listed as the backup right guard. So I guess they don't – it doesn't – according to the ESPN depth chart, it looks like they don't have any interest in playing him ever.
Well, that's not official. It never is official.
I know it's not official, but backup left tackles listed as Amin Donkwu.
Whoever that is.
I don't know who that is. You have a guy named Fred Johnson backing up Lane Johnson at right tackle. Yep. I really couldn't tell you much about them. So, like, Becton's like your main backup tackle for me, even though it doesn't say it on the ESPN depth chart.
Bob follows it up. Bob, I don't mean to pick on you, but this is not happening. He says to trade Steen for, in a package for Hendrickson. Yeah, that's not happening.
Bob, will you do a live drug test on air?
Yeah, Molly Mall says, if you think trading Hendrickson for a backup right guard, you're out of your mind. Yeah,
if he thinks we can get Hendrickson for Steen, I got a bridge in New York I can sell him, and I got a condo in Florida I can sell him.
Yeah, it's not happening. So yeah, you keep the comments coming.
Maybe that can be a deadline. Maybe that Hendrickson can be a trade deadline person because
sure,
trade deadline. Yeah,
I think the Bengals might have a rough year in a tough AFC.
Well, we'll see.
Hit that like, hit that
subscribe, guys. Keep the comments coming. Let us know who you think will win out at right guard. And we bring in Les Bowen on the Birds. Hey, Les, how are you?
Great, guys. How are you?
We're doing really well.
All right.
So, you got us at a good time because we all answered the poll question. So I'll bring it up again. Mekhi Becton will beat out Tyler Steen for the right guard position to start the season. What do you think?
Well, if you had to make a decision right now, it'd be Becton because Steen hasn't practiced in more than a week. He practiced on a limited basis today, which all that means is he did like the warm-up drills and stuff. He didn't do anything, working against a defensive lineman or any of that stuff. I have to see him get out there before I really think he's going to win a starting job. You were right. Chuck's made some really good points. The idea when they brought Becton in was for him to be the swing tackle. There have been many, many indications, however, that they're not carried away with Tyler Steen. One is his lone start last season, which was horrendous. He's had a hard time adjusting, going from tackle to guard. Becton claims, and I wrote about this several days ago for PHLY, if you talk to Becton, he talks a really good game. He claims he's had no problem whatsoever adjusting, going to tackle to guard. He's never played guard in the NFL or anywhere else that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Becton's a huge guy who was drafted 11th overall just 4 years ago. So from that standpoint, that trumps Tyler Steen, but we all know, he's here now because he wasn't what the Jets hoped he would be. He had a very good rookie year, and then after that, not. He got hurt 2 years in a row, and then last year he was horrible. So, yeah, right now it's got to be Becton. From what I see from the practice reports, Becton looks really good in run situations, and he's still really whiffy in pass situations. Moving him inside might, give him some help there. But until Tyler Steen gets out on the field and does something, I'm not going to give him anything. That's just kind of my feeling about it. You're right that they're ideal, as I said. When they brought in Becton, it was to be the swing tackle, and their idea then was that Tyler Steen would be the right guard. But here we are. Becton's doing it every day out there, more, for better or worse. And there's a point where, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
I don't think we've reached that point, but, it's going to get there at some point.
Yeah. No, you made a good point too, in terms of like because like pass protection is what worries me with Becton. But being on the interior, if he can adjust, that does give him help because when you're at tackle, you're essentially outside of like chip blocks and certain things. You're essentially on an island, but when you're on the interior, you do have help from the center, and so maybe that does help appease some or offset some of that pass protection worries. So I mean, we shall see. He is huge, and like if you're going to run the ball and emphasize it with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, Becton does give you a huge advantage. That is a very, very, very good point. Very, very good point. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. We're a month away from week 1, and like I said earlier, guys, it's the one position where we're like, well, I don't want to say one because linebacker, I guess you can also say, but
yeah.
But
even linebacker is kind of in better shape in terms of. I think we think that if it's Devin White and Baum, that that the coaches are pretty excited about that, even if Baum is kind of a nobody. Clearly, Vic Fangio loves him. So, and Sirianni's talking about his toughness yesterday and all that. I mean, right guard is the place where they don't have a great answer that we're sure they feel good about. You know, I think they are okay with what they have at linebacker. Maybe I'm wrong. And you mentioned corner, which they're trying. Yeah, all of a sudden, I want to write about this sooner or later. Last year, they're signing guys off the street. They're starting Mario Goodrich in one game. They've already cut him this year. Now it's like, well, we could have this guy at CB2 or maybe that guy or, this guy over here. They're all good. It's almost too good to be true. But, yeah, they haven't made the decision, but they have good options there.
Yep.
And they have what they think are decent options at linebacker. But we don't know that they have a right guard, really.
Yep, exactly.
Like Chip used to say, optionality.
Optionality.
Yeah.
Let's. Oh, sorry, Briggs. Did you have?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to transition over to linebacker, unless if you have.
Because that was a big thing today.
Let me ask my question then before you transition.
Sure, go ahead.
Les, have you gotten any wind out of camp as to how physical they are being in camp? No, we had a big little debate about it. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago.
You hear this talk about toughness, and I think they're going longer some days than they did last year, which, of course, I mean, last year was an outlier even for Nick Sirianni because you're coming off the Super Bowl and guys are still banged up and stuff. Last year was a really soft camp for good reason. This year, I don't know that it's that much more physical. You don't want to get a lot of people hurt. That's kind of a bad idea. They're certainly working harder on the field. Nick, throughout his tenure, has been big on classroom work instead of working on the field. And I do think they're working more on the field now than they did in previous camps. I can't tell you whether it's really more physical. I mean, they do those thud things. They don't really tackle to the ground anymore at all. Yeah. They do those thud periods where there's contact, but it's not, pile driving guys or anything.
Yeah.
Les, what do you?
Go ahead, PY. Go ahead. Yeah.
What do you think? Because there was a report out today that Reed Blankenship was talking about how Fangio is having them watch tape on tackling techniques and things like that. Like, do you think that's something that they're going to play like great focus on, or is it just something to be like, hey, let's put some extra technique work in there, or this is going to be like an extreme focus we're going to be dealing with in the defense?
I don't know, but I think Fangio is a very exacting defensive coordinator. He's not a guy who's like, hey, guys, that was a good effort. You tried. He wants to see things done the way he wants them done. And, I think that's part of that. I think that reflects that focus of his. He has certain things that he's going to require. And I think that's one of them, and it's going to be real interesting with some of these guys, how that goes. I'm real interested in, and I know this is an over addressed topic, but the whole conditioning thing with Carter and Davis. We've all talked about that, but week 10, week 12, week 14, Vic Fangio is going to be real unhappy, and he's not going to make any secret of it if they're not playing the way they did in week 4, I mean, he talked today, Fangio did, and he's pretty blunt about things. He doesn't trash guys. He doesn't rip guys, but he admits when things weren't good, He talked about Nakobe Dean today. He said, well, he started out really good, and then we went to that stadium practice, and he had kind of a bad day, but he's doing all right. I mean, it wasn't, he's the most wonderful, blah, 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 So Fangio's very exacting. He's going to want tackling done a certain way. He's not going to be happy with, you almost got him, or you held him up for the other guy or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I hear you. And I think that's a breath of fresh air to have that sort of mentality. I don't know, like Les, if you think of someone that correct me, but I think the last time we had an old school type of mentality, that was Jim Johnson. I mean, because his successor was Coach McDermott, right? But I don't remember if McDermott was really no,
McDermott would run real hot and cold on guys. He was a very young coach at that time.
Yeah, he was really young.
And 1 week, Macho Harris would be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And 3 weeks later, Macho Harris would be inactive. He got excited about guys and then quickly got disillusioned with them. Ernie Sims there's a shark in the water, a training camp at Lehigh. I think Sean's evolved a lot since then, but that was kind of the way he was. He wasn't really a guy that would say anything, that wasn't great about a guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now Schwartz occasionally would drop hints here and there, but Schwartz would mostly filibuster when he didn't really want to talk about how a guy was playing. But
he was still he was hard on guys, from what I heard.
Hard on them personally, but not in public. Yeah,
in public. Yeah, he was very.
No, he and Chris Long. Chris Long was going to try to come back after his last year. I think Howie kind of asked him to, and Chris talked to Schwartz about it, and Schwartz was like, "Well, if you want to play, 2 or 3 reps, I guess we could figure out to get you in there somehow." I mean, it was like, "Nah, don't come back." Yeah.
So I can't remember anyone else. So it's like it's a good feeling to have that back after having so long not having that. And I think it was Chris Long or was it I forget who it was, but they're just saying that you can kind of see now why some defensive players in Miami didn't gravitate well toward Fangio.
Yeah.
Old school kind of mindset and tone. And with Miami, that defense being a lot of young guys,
right.
I mean, I don't know if you want to say Ramsey. I don't know if you want to still.
Well, it was just such a, he and McDaniel are such an odd pair.
Yeah.
When you have a head coach who's giving off a completely different vibe, I think that's difficult. And I'm not sure you need to prepare the ground for somebody like Vic Fangio. Here, the defense knows what happened last year. And they knew they were going to get, a coach who was going to hold their feet to the fire a little bit. And they all seem to right now have the right attitude toward it. Now, if things don't go well, that won't be the case. But, I think Sirianni's doing his best to be, even though he's not completely like Fangio in a lot of ways, but he's not as different as McDaniel was. That was a real contrast in styles there, and it just didn't work for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I think it just being Miami, I just don't think he belonged there. Not that he shouldn't be there, but his beliefs and philosophies, I don't think it gels for a place like Miami. Because
that's a good point.
Young players, high flying offense, they want to be the highlight reel guys. I don't know if you can coach them like you can in Philly. Philadelphia is not Miami. There's not
And
like
he
the
is a Philly
nightlife.
guy.
There's not the
Fangio started off his press conference talking about his trip to Canton over the weekend. He went there for Patrick Willis being inducted,
Yes.
but he also got to talk to Merrill a little bit. And he said he told Merrill that he's up there now with like Bysom and, he mentioned a bunch of other, iconic Bill Campbell, people like that. Vic Fangio knows this stuff, and that's he fits the city. And I think a lot of the players here understand the city. At least that's the standard that people like Brandon Graham have set, and I think players coming in here are kind of going to have to adapt that mindset,
Or else.
But
Yeah.
Fangio, you were talking about the linebackers, Chucks. That's what I wrote about. I have a piece up on PHL.
Oh, nice.
So Fangio talked about the way linebacking has gone. When Fangio first came into the league, inside linebackers were really important. And then we went through a long period where people kind of thought they were very fungible, almost like people think about running backs now. You wanted to get more defensive backs on the field for all these receivers. You weren't that worried about stopping the run. But the last decade or so, Fangio was saying, inside linebackers have become much more important again. The fullback disappeared. And you really need but teams are still running quite a bit. The good teams, run. It seems like more than they did a decade ago. And you need a linebacker who can really cover and really stop the run. And that's a hard thing to find. And he's always had that guy wherever he's been. And I don't think they have it here. We'll see. Devin White, was drafted 5th overall. And was that guy for a few years. And what the hell happened in Tampa, I have no idea. But, I see a potential clash unless Howie Roseman's thinking has evolved on this. If Fangio's going to be here more than a year, he's going to want a linebacker who's all that, either through free agency or the draft or whatever, I don't think you have to draft one in the first round, but the Eagles haven't drafted one in the second round since Michael Kendricks in 2012, and the guys they've drafted in the third round so far haven't been any good, like Davion Taylor and Kobe Dean. What's the Kobe Dean done? So they're going to have to find Vic Fangio a linebacker unless Devin White, turns it around. And Vic loves this Zach Bond guy who's been a special teams player for 5 years. It's going to be real interesting. It really is. That's a position that the Eagles have not put any resources into. Howie just won't re-sign guys. Even if they come up with if they find good ones, like 2 years ago when they had TJ Edwards and Kazir White, at the end of the season, their contracts were up, and Howie was like, "Bye, we'll just take whatever falls out of our pocket, loose change. We'll play that at linebacker and be okay." No, and I'm not you have to have another Jeremiah Trotter who weighs 265, and no, you don't. But you have to have a guy who can play. You have to have somebody there who's an elite player. In Vic Fangio's system. And the Eagles haven't had that. Maybe Nigel Bradham in 2017 for 1 year. Was that guy?
Jordan Hicks before he got hurt. I mean, Jordan Hicks.
Hicks had that kind of ability.
Yes.
And he had you could argue that the Eagles should have re-signed him, even though everybody agreed at the time that he got hurt too much and blah, blah, blah. Yep. He went on and didn't get hurt that much. Over
I know.
In true Eagles fashion.
So,
by the way, everyone, Vic Fangio, an East Stroudsburg University graduate. So he's always got my vote.
I just think this linebacking
if he stinks,
thing
he
is going to
stinks.
be really.
It goes to the ESU man.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be real interesting because Fangio is going to want that.
Yes,
and whether the Eagles are going to provide it for him long term, I can't tell you. They haven't.
Yeah.
I mean, their last star linebacker, his son plays for the team now.
Yeah, I know.
He's getting first team reps.
It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
and Fangio poo-pooed that today. He just said, basically, that's not any kind of declaration or anything.
No.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
It's not.
Jeremiah Jr., I didn't see him coming out as a guy that was going to light it up as a starting linebacker, especially right away. But, maybe it's a reflection of what they don't have. Vic's kind of
basically,
let's try this. Let's try that.
Yep. But I like how, Les, I like how you said you did right about the linebackers, because that quote, that whole excerpt from Fangio was something I really it jumped out to me this morning when I read it. I posted a long tweet about it on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Like it's like the two parts, and you touched on it. Like the first part of it saying, you need a linebacker in coverage and who can both do well in coverage and can play the run. This is why exactly I've been saying this for years, and like this is why in today's game, the coverage ability of a linebacker I prioritize so much. I value that a lot. And like I come across so many people that they're like, no, I just need a linebacker that can tackle. Like, no, you need a linebacker who can run. I got into, even with PY, we had during the draft, we got into a debate over, okay, who's our linebacker one? Is it Junior Colson or Edgerrin Cooper? I was a Junior Colson guy for the Eagles because he could cover and he was solid all around. But PY wanted Edgerrin Cooper because he was a downhill guy, but he couldn't cover. So I did not want Edgerrin Cooper here. So hearing that, I guess you can say is a kind of validation. Like it is so important. I want to hammer it home that like in today's game, a linebacker who can cover even a little bit, even if you're just like solid at it, that is so important because.
And if you're really good at it, you have an elite defense. Usually.
Exactly. Like people talk about the missed tackles this defense has had last year, and absolutely 100%. But then we also forget how much our linebackers got annihilated and exposed in coverage over and over, just throws to the middle of the field.
It was horrible. Yeah.
Like
every week after the Niners game.
Oh my gosh. Like you have to have competency there. So like that was the first part. And then like the second part that was kind of revealing was the fact that Fangio essentially said, like, we don't have anyone there. So like all these people that, kind of like hyped up Devin White to be like, oh, like this is a diamond in the rough. No, like Devin White is what he is. Like he's struggled. Like who's the starting linebacker in Tampa? His running mate for a while. I forget.
Levante David.
Levante David. Yeah.
Levante David masked so much in that defense for Devin White. That
makes sense. Yeah.
Devin White was like freelancing so much and like would be oftentimes not in the right position, and Levante David would correct that. Like, and so that just it goes to show how great Levante David is, and two, it explains why last season Devin White got benched. He lost his job, and that's why he was where he was. So like we have to temper expectations with Devin White. I know a lot of people love that he's a big name coming in, and that like he's assumed like a kind of like a leadership role so far. That's all great, but when it comes to the field, like don't get mad if you start to see him struggle.
Yeah, Tampa Bay doesn't just give away great defensive players. That's one thing that they've been pretty good at over the years. I hope he does well, and so far I think he's done fine. But it's a weird situation with him. His first 2 or 3 years are so different from his last couple years, and he's still. That's one thing about linebacking and why it is a hard position to draft. It seems like there's a lot of guys that have like a few good years. It's almost like running backs, that after a few years, it's like, well, is he really that good anymore? I don't know if it's the physical toll or what it is about that position. But you mentioned Levante David playing well beside him. This might be unpopular, but Jeremiah Trotter Sr., when he was at his best for the Eagles, he couldn't cover anybody hardly.
No, he couldn't.
But they had Carlos Emmons.
Yes, yeah.
one of the most underrated players in Eagles franchise history.
He was my number 10 on our list a couple weeks ago. If you remember.
Those two guys together, made it work. And later in his career, I would hear, you talk to people around the league, and people would say, all you do with Trotter is play action. He bites every time he starts running toward the line of scrimmage, throw the ball over him. That as big a legend as he was, he was great against the run because he weighed 265 pounds and he hit like a load of bricks, but he was not a coverage linebacker at all.
He wasn't. And it was a different game back then. So
yes.
That was, that was allowed.
Teams were all run first back then.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a different time, and you need that. You need that coverage linebacker. And Martian does ask, where did Junior Colson get drafted to? He went to the Chargers with his coach. He got drafted by his coach with Harbaugh.
Sure? I thought he went to the Patriots.
No, Junior Colson went to the Chargers.
I'm looking.
Junior Colson NFL draft. It's drafted to mission linebacker.
Okay, you're right.
Chargers. Yep.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah. So that's the guy I wanted, but I mean, it is what it is at this point. We'll see what we can muster up.
Refresh my memory, Chucks. Where did they draft Colson? What
third
spot?
round? I think third round.
You see, that's I remember that now. Yeah, because I would have loved to have seen that, but the Eagles just weren't. They just won't.
They won't. And I don't. I'm going to say this, and people are going to overreact. I love the move that they made. I believe was the right move, but if they didn't trade up to get DeJean, that's where I would have wanted Junior Colson. Is that second, right at that where they were in the second round? Right. So it's I love the DeJean pick because you got to steal, but that's who I wanted to target. Them to target is Colson right at the end of the second round. But I mean, I like where he went. He went with his college coach, so it's a good spot for Junior. So good for him. But we'll see. I mean, Zach Bond, he could end up being I was saying, maybe they love him, like you said, Les. Maybe he's the next version of Nigel Bradham in terms of just a low key free agent signing that turns out to be a good starter. Possibly. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not saying I'm banking on it, but if they like him that much, maybe there's a reason. So we don't know. Yeah. But then Nakobe Dean, it's getting trouble.
He's not good in coverage. He's an undersized linebacker who's not good in coverage. That's a bad combination.
Very bad combination. Very bad.
Well, I think it's telling because they made a signing this week. They signed Shaquille Quarterman.
Yeah. I think they signed him to be a special teams guy, but who knows? But Nakobe, that Georgia defense was so good. That's part of the problem with trying to draft guys from a great defense. You never know, is he that good or is everybody around him just so good that he looks better than he is, and now maybe I'm being way premature. I mean, Nakobe's got a lot of time left, but maybe he just needs to learn more about how to cover. I don't know. Maybe it's not speed. Maybe it's just savvy, that he can pick up. But
game time
right now, they're not even thinking about starting.
And that's why I think it's tougher than people realize to draft these from these super. I know I'm on here all the time, SEC, Big Ten. But you need to really do your homework and figure out, okay, was the Georgia defense studly because of Nakobe Dean, or was Nakobe Dean just plugged in around a bunch of studs and was able, I could have been the linebacker.
Fair point.
I don't even remember what school it was off the top of my head because I'm really old. But many, many, many years ago, the Eagles drafted a linebacker named Matt McCoy in the second round.
Yes, I remember.
And he was terrible. He couldn't play at all. And it turned out he played next to a guy, and I don't remember that guy's name either, in college, whom the Raiders drafted, who had several really good years in the league.
It reminds me of us drafting the wrong Matthews. Remember, we got Casey.
Yes.
The Eagles
had a long string of undersized linebackers who weren't really super fast or super skilled. They were just undersized.
Yeah, undersized, and I mean, like we had so many. I could go back to remember, Chris Gokong. I remember him was there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
remember Stuart Bradley was like high expectation for Stuart Bradley.
Well,
There's
Stu, I
was a
think would have been
stud. He
okay
tore
if
his
he hadn't
ACL
torn up
every
his
year.
knee.
yes.
In the first link public practice ever, he destroyed his knee, and he was never the same player
He's
after
never the
that.
same. Yeah,
But
it's a
yeah,
shame.
you can go with Gokong was a guy they expected a lot out of. Really smart guy, but
Yeah.
not a great athlete. He went to Cal Poly,
Yes,
and interesting story. That's a great school, and
Mhm.
he was an adopted kid whose adopted father was like a bio mechanical engineer, and Chris wanted to follow in his footsteps and design like smart prostheses that would, for soldiers and stuff, that would, mimic real arms and legs, which is pretty sophisticated stuff. But playing linebacker he was not great at that, unfortunately.
he wasn't. Yeah.
Date my daughter. I'll find another linebacker. That's what I say about those guys. I hear.
Before you go, Les, we do have one more question for you from the chat.
Sure.
Marshall Lynch says, where do we see Fangio's immediate impact show up on this defense?
Just soundness. Just, that I keep going back. I say this on every podcast I'm on. There was a game last year where the commentator talked about the line, the linebackers, and the defensive backs. It was as if they were playing three different systems. We're not going to see that. We're going to see cohesive defense. I don't know that they're going to have talent at all the places they need to have talent. It troubles me that Bryce Huff isn't off to a great start here, but I think we'll see sound scheming, you won't see like wide open spaces for guys to catch passes or run through. Whether people will actually make plays is a different matter, but I think you'll just see defense the way defense is supposed to look.
Yeah. I think to that point is, I know it's a general statement with every new coordinator that comes in with a new system, but I know with Fangio, there's a lot of stuff that the players have to learn. So it usually takes several weeks for them to catch on. We saw it with Miami.
It might.
With Miami. But I think what the Eagles have advantage of is that there were a lot of principles already instilled the previous 2-3 years from the previous coordinator. So like not everything is that
whether they were being taught the right way or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they do have a head start because a lot of the principles are there already. It's just a matter of cleaning them up and getting those nuances, those details down that Fangio wants. So maybe that does help speed up the learning curve, and we do see it be proven to be a bigger difference. And I think a big benefactor of that I wanted to throw in, I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, as great as he was 2 years ago, I think in this season he's going to hit another level with Fangio. So
also I should mention before I go that with Fangio, Sirianni talked yesterday about toughness and guys bringing toughness, and Gardner-Johnson and Bond as guys that bring toughness and physicality. And I think you'll see that with Fangio. He's not gonna play guys that don't show that. And I think even guys who aren't really like that way naturally are going to have to kind of be like that, to play for Vic Fangio.
100% agree.
Les, before you go, Kirk Morrison was the linebacker that played next to.
Yes, that was the guy. Yes, thank you. Yes, was that San Diego State or what?
He actually went a round later than Matt. The Eagles drafted McCoy in the second round, and Morrison went in the third round.
Morrison, much better player, and turned out to be the reason why McCoy looked good. Yeah, I knew McCoy was in trouble at Lehigh. His first training camp, they were having a session. Back then they did used to tackle to the ground sometimes in training camp, but they were having a session where explicitly you were not supposed to tackle anybody or hit anybody. It was like they'd already done that. This was a different setup. And McCoy twice came across the field and popped a guy as he was going out of bounds and nearly started a fight. And finally, Andy Reid is like in his face saying, what about this? Don't you understand? He thought he was impressing people by hitting during a non-hitting period, when really he was, they were like, "Are we going to cut this guy? What the hell?"
So Les, I was at that, and that's a good Andy Reid story. I saw Andy Reid freak out on Freddie Mitchell in his rookie camp. It was his rookie camp. My dad was an advertiser with Merle's radio station up in Bucks County. So we got one day for the camp at Lehigh, we would get to go on the field and do like the VIP access. They were doing 2-minute drill, and Freddie Mitchell caught like this slant, starts kind of, doing his Freddie thing, showboating, flexing, and Andy Reid just tore him apart. What are you doing? We're a 2-minute warning. Because Andy just kind of stood there most of the time and just kind of took it all in.
Yes.
And he always took all the blame in public, but I feel like he told guys what they needed to know.
Right.
Behind
Freddie had a very, I'm not going to go on here all night, but Freddie had a bizarre concept. If he got into his route and he felt like he was covered, he would just run some other route, thinking, I'll get away from this guy. And Donovan McNabb is back there like, I can't throw the ball to him. I never know. He's supposed to be over here. I'm going to throw an interception if I throw it where he's supposed to be, because he's never where he's supposed to be. But to Freddie, this made sense. To Freddie, he was zigging while the other guy zagged.
Yeah. Well, he made this play right here, and
yes, 4th and 26.
Fourth and 26.
A broken clock is right at least once a day.
Yes,
twice.
That's the best game I've ever been to.
He had talent. Freddie did. He was just nuts.
Get the phrase right. A broken clock is right twice a day.
No, not with Freddie Mitchell. Once.
God, my God.
Remember he called out Rodney Harrison before the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
Let's not talk about I'm scarred from that Super Bowl. Les, thank you once again. It's always
fun, guys. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah,
Bye,
you too.
Les.
We'll see you next week, Les, okay?
Indeed.
See you. The great Les Bowen. Always a pleasure getting his insight and input with us. We've got about roughly 10 more minutes. Just a reminder, Baggio's Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Mention A2D Radio to get 10% off your in-store purchase. One more camp topic I wanted to talk about. It was kind of tough on today. Aaron Moorhead had a very interesting quote, and he pretty much said that it looks like the wide receiver 3 position, essentially, it's going to be like a toss-up. Well, not a toss-up. It's going to be like several guys mixing in as a rotation. So I want to get your inputs on that, but for me, I think that's a good idea, because I think in certain situations you need different skill sets.
Yep.
And say you have obviously Paris Campbell, who I think has gotten most of the reps at wide receiver 3 overall. And we know when he's healthy, he's a solid player. He's a solid explosive player, right? We know his play style, right? Johnny Wilson, completely other type of wide receiver, big red zone target. So when you're in different situations, you need different skill sets. So I think that's a good way to approach it. I think that, especially when you get in the red zone, we saw it from when Julio Jones was here last year, his big body was a big help in the red zone. So maybe Johnny Wilson can bring kind of that similar type of tool or weapon to this offense as just a situational wide receiver in certain packages. So I like that mindset, because you're not putting too much, you're not relying too much on a certain guy that may not be able to be a full-time player anymore, right? So I don't know. What are your thoughts? You guys like that idea?
Ideally, Chucks and PY, I would love Johnny Wilson to be this team's 3rd wide receiver, because you can put him outside and have the twin towers out there with AJ Brown and Johnny Wilson. And I think Devontae Smith with Kellen Moore can do some pretty special things in the slot. Doesn't have to be all the time, like you said, situations, but seems like what I've been reading, Anais Smith out of Texas A&M is not up to snuff. And I haven't heard it. Yeah, I haven't heard a thing about
John Ross?
Yeah, John Ross. I haven't really heard his name at all. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Britton Covey, I don't think he's going to
He's been getting some reps, so I think he's in the mix too. I think he's in the conversation because I think lately, the past 2 practices at least, he's been playing well in certain situations with first team reps. So I think he's in the mix as well, which is like he's like the same type of receiver that Paris Campbell is in terms of, he's a small jitterbug type of receiver in the slot. So that's good. I mean, Anaya Smith, I had said it after the draft. If I were to pick my least favorite pick, it was Anaya Smith.
That one I totally agree.
Yeah. Like, because I thought, I'm surprised. What was his name? Was it Malik Washington? Yep. He fell to where he fell.
Virginia, yeah.
I think so. Yeah, like he kept falling. I'm like, someone take Malik Washington, and then I think it was he went to the Dolphins.
He went to Miami. Yeah, he went to Miami. Yeah.
I would have rather had Malik Washington over Anaya Smith. So I mean, I'm not saying Anais is definitely now already a bust. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is he's been struggling so far. It looks likely he's projected to probably be a first year what do they call it, like a ghost IR redshirt year for him. So I mean,
I can see that.
You can see it. I mean, I wasn't as high as Anaya Smith, and after the draft, people were all like, nice. Yeah,
I didn't like him either, Chucks. I mean, every play he made at Texas A&M was like, his whole film was busted coverages.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, of course he ran 70 yards. There was no within 10 yards of him. Like, I don't know. I agree with you on the draft.
People were surprised I had said that. I'm like, they're like, oh no, it's Jalex Hunt is the worst pick. But I'm like, but I can see what they're doing with Jalex. Like, I can understand a physical specimen who has like elite tools, they want to develop it. So I can understand that pick. The Anaya Smith pick, it's just like, I don't know. Like, I didn't see it. There are guys, if you wanted other receivers like him, there were guys that I liked better than Anaya. So,
I mean, I know Jalex was I don't even remember where he got drafted out of. Small school guy.
Small school.
Like,
I forget the name of
you watch his YouTube highlights, which is where I put the guys in, like, he explodes on the film, albeit like not at Georgia.
He's a freak.
School, like, the production matches his physical attributes.
Yeah.
Which
so
you can
exactly. So you can understand where they're coming from in terms of, hey, there's a physical freak here. Let's grab them and see what we can do, and we can mold them.
That's why I hate guys. I hate guys like the guy Chop Robinson from Penn State this year. I don't get it.
I don't
like,
get it either.
Oh, he's a freak. He's got all these tools. I'm like, all right, he's been a 3-year starter. He's got 11 career sacks. Like, if he's such a freak, why ain't he being a freak?
It's Penn State. Penn State's all about like the speed guys. Like his rushing mate. I forget the name now, but he also was when in the draft too from Penn State. Oh God, like the name is escaping me. I hate when this happens to me. I'm sorry, but like the other Penn State guy, I thought they were like equally graded, but the Penn State guy kept getting like I think he went somewhere day 2. So like. If you want a toolsy pass rusher from Penn State, go with the other guy that went later. I wasn't as high on Chop Robinson. I wasn't. I think that, but we'll see. I mean, it's still early. We haven't played any games, so I'm not gonna put my stamp on anyone. But yeah, PY, what's your thoughts on wide receiver?
Adisa Isaac went to
Adisa Isaac. Yes, I thought he was like. I thought if you're talking about him and Chop Robinson, I think okay, like same grade to me. Like they were similar grades. Like you're talking about second round or late second round, and that's where I would have taken them. And I don't know where Adisa got drafted. What round he got?
Baltimore, third round. Baltimore.
Third round. Baltimore. There's the value. That's so much better value than Chop Robinson.
If the Ravens think you're good, you're probably good.
Yeah, you're probably good. Yep. PY, did you give input on the wide receiver 3 spot?
So I am still of the mindset that wide receiver 3 is just not here yet. Like I would love it if it's Johnny Wilson because he's a big body. He's going to help you out in the red zone. He can do some blocking, helping Saquon move around in the back with it, which would be nice. Obviously, Paris Campbell's a fast guy, which is great. Same thing with the guy from Cincinnati, former guy from Cincinnati. But like I think it's all going to depend on what the situation is. I think Kelton Moore is basically going to use all these guys in different motions and different setups and things like that. But like, I still think wide receiver 3 is not here. Like, I think they go out and they get the guy from the Raiders. I can't remember who's
Renfro.
Yeah, it's Hunter Renfro. I 100% think they could go out and get Hunter Renfro or maybe someone else.
I'd like John Mechie. I think
I'd be fine with Mechie.
Were you the one that posted that mentioned that scenario? Yeah. I really like that scenario. If there's a guy who I think could be traded for cheap, we'll get Mechie. But I mean,
we're 4 weeks away from the annual Howie summer trade, so
we'll see what happens. But yeah, good show, guys. We got training camp pretty much, the first 2 weeks in the books, for at least for us, not for them, for us. We got 2 shows in on the training camp, and next week we will be talking about the Eagles' first preseason game. That's exciting. So we'll give a reaction to that, what we saw, what we think, stock up, stock down, the usual, but it is something to look forward to. Like Briggs and I said at the top of the show, football is practically here. It's coming. It's just around the corner, 1 month away, and we're really excited to see what we can do. So we've got, remember, Baggio's Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Make sure you mention A2D Radio for 10% off your in-store purchase. From myself, from Brinks, from PY, and all of us at A2D Radio. Make sure you catch all of our shows throughout the week. And until next week, same time, same place, we will see you. Go Birds. Peace out.
Go Birds.